It's a quiet classroom where the teaching process doesn't need voice. Here, the teacher and the students are deaf or hearing impaired. Kaori Kobayashi lost her hearing when she was 5. She used to be a graphic designer in Japan and was the very first deaf applicant to be granted a New Zealand permanent residency 5 years ago. Settling in New Zealand, she realized that she could make her long-time dream come true.
In the past, I've really wanted to work with deaf people and to interact with them, but deaf culture in Japan's a little bit behind New Zealand. I think New Zealand's much more advanced. So when we teach students, we taught Japanese Sign Language, and I like doing that. So I moved to New Zealand. I thought, I don't want to be a graphic designer anymore. I want to work in a deaf school where I can mix with other people, teach deaf students. So that's why I decided to make the change.
A change that proved to be a challenge. Last year, she was the only deaf among 200 hearing students in the secondary school teaching degree at the University of Auckland. And she made it. And now she could possibly be the first Asian teacher in New Zealand who is deaf.
Ooh, I feel good. There's not very many deaf teachers of the deaf in New Zealand. And there aren't any Asians at the moment. But there are lots of Asian students. So I think it's really good to be a role model to show that Asian people can do things. Because there's lots of Pākehā people, and that's great, but there's no Asian people. So I think it's great to show that even if you're Asian, if you're a deaf person, you can do things. So I think I'm a good role model for the Asian deaf students.
And we have currently got 11 teachers of the deaf working in schools in New Zealand who are deaf. There are over 100 teachers of deaf children, but only 11 of them are actually deaf people. So it's quite a small percentage. I think it's a real asset for us to have deaf teachers of the deaf. They naturally communicate more successfully with the students. They understand the students' cultural perspectives and have a natural way of identifying with the students' learning style. Deaf teachers of the deaf also help to make balance in our workforce because they are colleagues who hearing teachers can work with to better understand the needs of their students. It's a real positive.
Well, really, she's been great. In the years that she's taught me, I have some good fond memories of her, and she's got great sign language, and she's easy to learn with, and she's been really precise, and always great to learn from her. Kaori is a very good teacher, really. She's got a wide variety of skills to teach me, and she's also a great role model.
The challenge for this role model doesn't stop there. This year, she's back at the University of Auckland taking a graduate diploma in special education to teach hearing impaired. And again, she's the only deaf student in the program. But this time, she's been given 2 interpreters.
Yes, it does have to be 2 interpreters because it's very intensive and very tiring for the interpreters and for Kaori, but particularly for the interpreters, so they will only work maybe 10, 15 minutes maximum, and then they switch.
It's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy for me to follow the lectures because I watch the interpreters to get my information, but I also have a note taker there as well. It's actually someone who's in my class, and so I get to copy their notes. So because when I'm watching the interpreters, I can't watch the PowerPoint. I really have to focus just on the interpreters, and I do miss information sometimes. And also when the class are chatting, and if it's really, really quick. And interpreters always have what we call lag time. They're always a little bit behind. So sometimes if I want to, interrupt or say something, I get a little bit behind. So there are those issues.
I think that she's done very well and has coped very well with the program. Having the experience of coming from one culture to another and adapting and being able to work within both those cultures without losing that identity in both cultures, I think is probably going to be a great benefit and asset to the work she does.
Kaori's husband, Kay, who has a PhD in engineering, is also deaf. At home, it's their dog Fatima who acts as their ears and alerts them to noises. And here, just like other migrant families who switch to their native tongue at home, Kaori and Kay switched to Japanese, but of course, Japanese Sign Language. Yes, each country has its own sign language. So for them, living in New Zealand means they cope with 3 cultures: New Zealand, Japanese, and deaf culture.
Deaf culture is really like deaf people's way of living, their traditions, their history, and language is a very important part of that. That's just how we operate and how we function. For example, you have Chinese culture. They have their own way of doing things. So deaf people have deaf culture, which is their way of living and being.
Around 7,000 deaf New Zealanders use New Zealand Sign Language. The language became official in New Zealand in 2006 with an equal status alongside English and Maori. More than 400,000 hearing-impaired New Zealanders are celebrating this year's New Zealand Sign Language Week starting from May 4th.
The theme for this year is Sign Language is in Your Hands. But the butterfly, the symbol of that, is really that if you've seen butterflies in the garden just flying around, they're really beautiful to watch. And it's really the same as when you're watching sign language. It's beautiful. And really the butterflies are free, they're independent, they can just go off and do what they want. And sign language gives deaf people that same sort of freedom of expression, freedom to do what we want to do, with no barriers.
Barriers that Kaori has overcome with the eloquence of her hands. Hands that now inspire other hearing impaired to take their own road to freedom.